Are our bodies ready to make this big change from, being so cold outside that you actually had to think about wind chill if you rolled your window down to suddenly it's so hot outside you can't get a breeze, and if your air conditioning's not working, you're suffering like that. It's hard on the body to make that adjustment right away, so we want to be careful this weekend when we're going to be outside. We've been inside for so long, everybody's ready to get out and play, but we've got to play gently into this. And to walk us through some things that we can avoid and ways to get through the heat is Dr. Tony Hamilton. Dr. Tony Hamilton is an emergency room physician for Essentia Health, and thank goodness he has taken a couple of moments out of his very busy schedule to join us this afternoon. Dr. Hamilton, good afternoon, and welcome to KFGO.
Hey, Dan, thanks for talking with me and let me help you out here with this. You hit some things right off the bat here that are core to what's going on. We talk about going from the cold weather to the hot weather, and we have the natural ability to acclimate to weather change, but when it's this abrupt, we don't have that gradual ease into it, whether it's going from hot to cold or those really dreadful cold snaps in January, or whether it's this all of a sudden going from literally the frost warnings, like you said, to 100-degree weather, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We've already seen a little bit of heat type of stress going on.
So, Dr. Hamilton, you've already had some cases in the ER the last day or so?
Oh, today, yeah. So what we're seeing is, people get out there and they're in the heat and they're not used to it. They're not planning for it, and they overheat and they start sweating and they start feeling crummy and they just push themselves. People that we see a lot of this in are folks that are out there. They don't have a choice. They're out there. They're construction workers, people that are up on roofs. They're framing houses. They're out working, pouring concrete. They're working yards, whatever it is, and they don't have the option of just stopping and going and sitting under the shade, or they push themselves and they don't take that opportunity when they need to. They're not staying well hydrated. And then we always have an elderly or a population that is not, their ability to compensate for heat or cold isn't very good to begin with. They've got comorbidities, medical problems that prevent them from being able to really deal with stressors like heat and cold, especially heat right now. And so they overheat easily. They can't sweat off that heat. And then people who drink alcohol, they vasodilate, and they wind up not realizing when they're getting into trouble as well.
Dr. Tony Hamilton, who is a ER physician at Essentia Health, is joining us today. Temperatures are expected to soar into the upper 90s, even maybe 100 by the weekend, creating conditions ripe for heat-related illness, heat stroke, heat exhaustion. And it is especially true given this time of year. We don't see this kind of weather until midsummer. It might catch us off guard, and that's why we're talking to Dr. Hamilton today. So, Dr. Hamilton, let's go outside this weekend. Let's look ahead, and let's say we're out enjoying ourselves. What should we look for if we think that there might be a problem with somebody that we're with outside?
Oh, absolutely. This isn't a medical thing. This is something that most people have the ability to witness. They look, okay, that person, they say, look, that person doesn't look good. They're sweating, they're red, they act like something's wrong. And you're looking at them, and you know that they don't feel well. That's the first warning sign where something's not right. They start getting weak, they're fatigued. Then that moves into not just fatigue, but maybe they're starting to get a little confused, or maybe they're not thinking clearly, and maybe they're not sweating anymore. And, the things that we have to do is get those people out of the heat as best we can, either in a cooler environment, get them in the shade. One of the most simple things that we do in the emergency department has nothing to do with any impressive technology. We mist them and put a fan on them, and that evaporative process sucks the heat off of those people, and it does an excellent job of that. And that's something anybody can do.
Dr. Hamilton, I was going to be one of my questions, since you've already said somebody's been in with a little heat exhaustion at the ER at Essentia. What does Essentia ER do if someone's brought in? Is it that simple, or are there other measures?
No, that's quite simply many times what we do. And then the other thing that we see is by that point, by the time they get to us, they're typically dehydrated. Maybe they've sweated their electrolytes off or shifted their electrolytes, and there's a problem with that. There's particularly potassium and magnesium. There's enough salt in most people's food and their diet that isn't really the problem that it was, say, the World War II, Vietnam, Korea era, where everybody carried salt tablets, or that was something that they did. But electrolytes do get off, and so the main thing to do is really hydrating well. We talk about 8 glasses of water a day. Well, that's fine if you're not out sweating it off, but there are people that go through 3 gallons of water a day. Well, you're not just going through water, you're going through electrolytes and sweating that out too. So when we get into this type of heat where people are out there really sweating, they're going out, they're playing golf, or they're playing baseball, or they're working, or whatever it is, I talk about sports drinks to people that come in, and I say, okay, well, maybe you need to get a sports drink, and for every cup of the sports drink that you use, you drink a cup or maybe 2 cups of water, but that replenishes those electrolytes, and it keeps you from having that component as well.
Should you, if you think something like this is going on, or somebody that you know or love, or whoever it is having a problem, should you get him in a cold shower like right away? Is that a thing to do?
No, I think that let them cool down slowly. When you get hot, you dilate the peripheral vessels. You're dilating in your skin at the periphery, and you start sweating, and your body is trying to shed the heat. And you do that by the evaporative process. There's a point where you can't sweat anymore, and that's when it becomes really dangerous because you no longer have the ability to shed heat. When we get folks that are in here in that, we're not dunking them in ice baths. Sometimes we'll put ice packs at their groin or armpits, maybe, to try to cool things down. But we're doing a lot of the evaporative process. We literally put a fan on them and start spraying them with water and let it just evaporate off. And that does a pretty good job.
Dr. Tony Hamilton, emergency room physician at Essentia Health, joining us today. We're talking about taking it cool in the heat, and if somebody should be exhibiting symptoms of heat stroke or heat exhaustion, what should we do? So, Dr. Hamilton, who should not go out in this heat?
Well, there are some folks that don't have a choice. I think that there are a lot of folks that shouldn't go out if they can avoid it. If they can stay in cooler climates, Dan, I think that the folks that have chronic medical problems, they have heart failure, they have lung problems, chronic lung problems, renal failure, those people are more susceptible, liver failure, those people are more susceptible to the effects of a heat-induced injury. And if they can stay in out of that, that's a good plan. For those folks who have to go out, some folks start earlier with their day. If you're going to go out and you're going to exercise, you're going to push through it, and go out early in the morning before it really heats up. Try to get out there before the sun's really cooking down on you, and try to wrap your day up where you're outside in it sooner.
Dr. Hamilton, that just triggers a memory of mine when I was a younger guy, and hitting the gym every day. I used to just love these days. I wouldn't turn my air conditioning on in the car on the way to the gym and on the way back. I'd keep my windows rolled up because I was thinking I'm getting a double extra workout today because this heat is making me work harder, and I'm sweating this all out, and I'm going to get skinny and look great. Is that an attitude you should have at all going into this stuff?
When you're young, you can do a lot of stuff that doesn't fly when you're older. And also, at that point, your ability to shed the heat is much better. And most of the time by then, we've acclimated to it. When I was a kid growing up, we didn't have air conditioning. So, you just gradually got used to it, and you just laid around with a fan on you when it was just miserably hot. And then there was the era of the sweatsuits, which was just basically a plastic suit you put on to sweat into. And I think that it's probably not a great idea, but I think that there's also a population of people that as long as they're not overdoing it, it's not going to hurt them.
Okay. And we certainly don't want to spoil anybody's fun. There's concerts this weekend. There's lakes, etc. And everyone's going to be enjoying, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to be enjoying an adult beverage. But it is important to note, Dr. Hamilton, that alcohol will dehydrate you. Yeah, alcohol, it pushes your kidneys to pee out the free water. And the other thing is that it, like I said before, when you get hot, and especially with alcohol, you vasodilate at the peripheral vessels, at the skin surface, so you're shedding heat. The problem with that is, though it sounds like, okay, well, that's a win-win, is that you do dehydrate much quicker, and then your ability to compensate for it is compromised. So, there's nothing wrong with that. Overdoing it, obviously, for any reason, isn't a great plan. I think that if you're going to be out there, there's no reason not to, if there's not a good reason, medical reason, not to be able to go out and enjoy the weather. But maybe bring an umbrella. Though it's not raining, it keeps the sun off of you, and that does help a lot. Dr. Hamilton, at what point should someone go to the emergency room?
I think that at any point a person is having a heat stress to the point where they're not thinking clearly, they're no longer sweating, they're not just fatigued, but they're acting like they really don't feel well. I think that's the point where we need to help them in the emergency department. And we run IV fluids, and we cool them down if we need to with the fan and the misting. We check their electrolytes because that sometimes is a big component, and replacing those electrolytes that make your muscles and your body work.
Dr. Tony Hamilton, emergency room physician at Essentia Health, joining us today to help us understand and be prepared a little bit as we go out in this heat over the next couple of days. Dr. Hamilton, I can't thank you enough for your expertise and for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Dan, it was a pleasure. I was happy to do it.
Well, you're so knowledgeable. We deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Hope you have a nice, cool weekend.
You too. Stay cool.
You bet. Take care. Bye-bye. Dr. Tony Hamilton, emergency room physician at Essentia Health, joining us today. KFGO time is 4:51. You're listening to The Drive on the Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO.
Across the nation, America is moving forward, finding our footing, getting back on our feet.